You're watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture.
I'll tell you, I was listening here quite intently, and our master of ceremony said how much he's looking forward to the continued debate between Ehud Olmert and Gilad Erdan, and I couldn't by thinking that, with all due respect to Kadima, to Likud, I'm so glad that there is Israel Beitenu. And I'm not here to speak for Israel Beitenu. It used to be, by the way, it used to be many years ago that politics in Israel stops at the Mediterranean, that when we go abroad, we speak pretty much in one voice. I have no doubt that all of us here, and I would say all the Zionist political parties in Israel, have the best wishes and intentions for the future and destiny of Israel at heart. Not all of them see clearly, unfortunately. And I thought that first, in the wake of a very, very tremendous week that we've had, the wake of the memorial for the Holocaust, and of course the memorial for the Israeli fallen soldiers and Yom Ha'atzmaut, maybe it is time to take a little stock of what we have achieved or where we are today, 64 years after our re-independence. And it is important here, and it is important anywhere, to talk about re-independence and the re-establishment of the State of Israel. Israel was not established 64 years ago. Israel was established 4,000 years ago. And it is important to send this message, because for too many years, successive Israeli governments, from left and right, were lax about talking about the Jewish rights and Jewish justice. We are not to be apologetic. We are not to be reactive. And yes, by being lax, we have let the Palestinian faulty narrative take center stage. Israel was reestablished in 1948 in our own homeland, rightly so. And if I look back and see what's trying to analyze what's been happening, I would say maybe not much. 64 years ago and today, the challenges are quite the same. Still, the threats have not diminished. The same powers, the same ideology that tried to kill and destroy the State of Israel 64 years ago still exists now. The lack of recognition that we are there by our own right is still today as it was 64 years ago. The attempt to delegitimize Israel is still existing today as it was 64 years ago. But one thing, which is the most important thing, has changed. And what has changed is Israel's capabilities, Israel's ability to defend itself by itself. Today, we are much stronger than we were 64 years ago, not only in objective, absolute terms. We are much stronger in relative terms to any combination or coalition of enemies that may gather against us. This is what has changed. This is not to say that we should be conceited. This is not meaning that we should be complacent. This is not meaning that we should continue and fight for our rights. All it means is that we should be and looking in a very sober objectivity into the future. Yes, we do want to have peace, but we want to have peace which is not just a piece of paper. We would like to have peace which is not just an agreement between rulers and governments, but a real historic reconciliations between people, which means understanding that we're there, and it should be a bottom-up, not just rulers, but academics and professional people and grassroots. And for that, we need to see a Palestinian Authority which teaches for peace, which teaches for recognition, which teaches for a real coexistence. So far, we see quite the opposite. They teach that all the land is theirs. They teach that we are the crusaders, that we are the foreigners to be thrown out. They teach that they will never recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And they do everything in their power to delegitimize Israel and to strip Israel from its right to defend itself. This is exactly what they're doing. And we see our enemies. They have not been able to cope with us militarily. 64 years later, we can defend ourselves by ourselves. They could not cope with us economically, with all the Arab boycotts. The first, the primary, secondary, tertiary, whatever. Until today, there is a boycott office in Damascus. Today, after we have joined the OECD, I believe that the economic war is also pretty much obsolete. They tried terrorism, and they couldn't. And I believe that the fence that we have built on our eastern fronts was very much helpful in keeping away suicide bombers and terrorists. Yes, the same fence that the Palestinian Authority and Mr. Abu Mazen tried to take us to The Hague, calling it all kinds of names. This is what is saving lives, and ultimately, it may allow a true negotiation and an atmosphere of peace. Today, we're doing the same on our southern border as we look into a very uncertain future in the Middle East. So they couldn't take us on, not militarily, not economically, not through terror, and they try now a different tactic, which is a political and legal warfare. And this is where the trenches are today. And these trenches, Israeli diplomats, ambassadors, consuls, are fighting every day for the truth, for the rights of Israel, not only to exist, but to defend itself. And this is what we're doing in spite of vicious attacks, terror attacks against our diplomats. Diplomats who are by nature, who are by their very, very purpose to bridge differences and to promote peace, are being attacked by Iranian terrorism, also with the aid of Palestinian terror organizations. But we will not be deterred. Not in Delhi, and not in Bangkok, and not in Baku, and not in Toulouse, anywhere else. We will continue to represent Israel and speak the word. Yes, we will do it, and we'll do it with great pride and skill as we know how to do it. Also, we have to remember, in the last 64 years, not only we have gained in capabilities, in strategic and military powers. This is not the essence of it all. It's also the 10 Nobel Prizes for Israelis in the last 64. Per capita, Israel has more Nobel Prizes than any other people in the world. It is the culture. It is the academia. Of course, it's the industry, especially the high tech. And today, in an era where the totality of human knowledge doubles itself every 14 months, and a lot of it is being done in Israel, we have a lot to be proud of, and we are very well poised for the future, for the world of tomorrow. Israel is one of maybe 5 or 6 countries that can manufacture, launch, and maintain orbiters in space. We have excellence centers in all fields, and we are willing to share it with the rest of the international community. Today, our policies in the UN is not just defensive, and there are many attacks on us, unfortunately, because of the Arab majority, which I'm sure you're all aware of. But this is not enough. We are also initiating to normalize, to cooperate, to participate in the new agendas of the international community, as we have a lot to give them. We live today in a world of 7 billion people. In a generation or less, it could be 10 billion. The problem is how we save this planet so it's inhabitable and hospitable for all of us. Food security, water resources, renewable energy, and other issues, Israel and Israel's scientists are right there and are being sought after by UN organizations. And we will continue to do that. Anyone who talks about Israel isolation does not really know what he's talking about. And when I read some newspapers, especially Haaretz in English, by the way, I feel Israel is alone on the planet, that we are all surrounded. Well, this is BS. Because I'll tell you, I will tell you how I measure isolation. I measure it by the number of diplomatic relations and embassies we have abroad, by the number of high-level visits that coming to Jerusalem, by invitation for Israeli officials to be abroad, by number of tourists, by bilateral trade and investments that we have with different countries, by scientific agreements, by joining international organizations, and by, I would say, by empirical data, not by someone who says, you have been condemned by the UN. We have always been condemned by the UN, and with all due respect to Prime Minister Olmert, and I do have respect for him, but after Cast led, there were countries that severed relations with us. First and foremost, Venezuela, Bolivia, Mauritania, but Turkey, a great friend, supposedly, of Israel. After Cast led, no matter what offers we gave, they were after us. And if you look today and you see where we are and how Israeli officials and experts and scientists are being welcomed any forum in the world, this is no isolation. I would always welcome such an isolation. And forget about the virtual world of the UN with its 130 votes against and 234. This is not a true reflection of the real world. Last thing I want to say, since I don't have the privilege of former prime ministers and ministers, I'm being cut off here. One thing I want to say, last thing I want to say, and this is maybe the most important message, and that is, with all the challenges that we face today from the outside, whether it's from afar, Iran, whether it's from closer by, including the Palestinians, but not only, Israel can handle quite successfully all these challenges from the outside. The true challenges that we should focus on are the internal challenges, the social, economic, and first and foremost is the national solidarity. And this is the reason why I joined Israel Beitenu, because first and foremost, we deal with national solidarity. And I don't care what names they give us. Racist, fascists, it's only people who do not know and do not even read what the platform is. We believe that there is this day and age, everyone but everyone should serve. It could be military service. If for some reason a military service cannot be available, or for some conscientious reasons, there is national service. There is civil service. But service should be universal to all. You know, in 1948, in 1948, 90% of the then Israeli society was mobilized, was drafted, was participating, was active. Today, no more. We are 90%. We're actually very dangerously coming down to the 60 and 50%. This cannot be. And this is why Israel Beitenu will insist that what is called the Tal law will be defunct. No longer it has a place in Israel's books of law, and the universal service is a universal service to all. We also believe that a normal, life-seeking democracy, and we are a democracy more than most democracies in the world, cannot allow subversion from inside. And no one will tell us, as Jews, we're knowing exactly what it is to be true to our faith, to our religion, our customs, our traditions, but also to be loyal to the state. We have been for too long, 2,000 years, dispersed in 130 different countries. There were Jewish people who were fighting each other, World War I, whether it's in the Tsar army or the Russian army or the German or the French. So by insisting that Israel is a Jewish state, it does not mean that non-Jews cannot live there with pride, with opportunities, with equalities, and be loyal to the state. There should be no dissonance. Being loyal to the state that gives you protection, that gives you social security, that gives you anti-crime and health care, to be loyal to it, that gives you a livelihood. If you want to live in the state of Israel, you have to be loyal to the state of Israel, irrespective of political views. And this is the challenge that we have. And this is the challenge that we have. And when we talk about loyalty and citizenship, is not to exclude anyone, it's to include everyone. And whoever is not willing to be included, then they have to do their soul searching and think about the future. One thing that we are also trying to project, and I think it's very, very consistent with everything that we believe in this homeland or homeward policies, is that when and if we meet a Palestinian leadership that is truly willing to make peace, and making peace is not making demands, is also offering concessions. And I have not seen yet the Palestinian leader who has offered any concessions, not from the Mufti time in the 1930s until Abu Mazen now. Only demands. But when we come to the time that we are sitting and we can really reason with each other, and I believe this will come only after a long period of interim arrangements, that we build a true partnership together. Today, there is no way, physically there is no way, to deal with the Palestinians on the core issues of territories, of security arrangements, of recognition. I mean, by the way, where is here the reciprocity? We, Israel, has recognized the self-determination of the Palestinians. Why don't they recognize our self-determination as Jews? So once we have that, and then we can meet, then the offer would be, not just to the Palestinians, but also to minorities in Israel that do not want to see a Jewish state, that are wishing ill to the Jewish state. We're going to give them a choice. They can go join a new Palestinian entity or stay and be completely loyal. I do not understand why there are some Israeli Arabs who every day wish us ill, that when we offer them, still theoretically, to join the Palestinians, they don't want to do it. And by the way, they don't have to give up anything. They don't have to give up their homes, their land, their profession, their place of work. You know what? Not even their social security. All they have to do is be proud Palestinians and vote for Ramallah and not for Jerusalem. They don't want to do it. Begs the question, why? So I can understand. The Arab Israelis enjoy great democracy. They're not sure that they will enjoy the same anywhere else in the Middle East. They enjoy great economic benefits and social equality. But why don't the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria? Why is the Palestinian Authority so much against welcoming them to their midst? Something to think about. Shall I stop here?
We'll hear more later.
Anyway, these are some of the issues I wanted to put here. And I have not talked to Iran yet about, but I guess there will have some later opportunities, except one thing. If I do not have this opportunity before, I want to say one thing about Iran. Yes, it is the responsibility, the ultimate responsibility of the international community. So is Syria. So was Libya. So is Darfur. So is South Sudan. So was Bosnia. Did they do well? Did they fare well, the international community, on these issues? So, as much as we expect, and we are part of this international community, as much as we expect them to do, and I think they should and will do what they need to do, we also have to think of other options. And last thing I want to say is when we talk about the talks started in Istanbul, next May, maybe in Baghdad, when we talk about concessions, no, maybe the Iranians should, not enrich until 20%, maybe until 5%, maybe until 3.5%. There is no half pregnancy. They should not enrich even 1%, because, not only because it will be much more difficult to monitor their operation, but because by achieving 3.5%, this is 70% of the efforts. Once you have 33.5%, you have achieved 70% of the efforts and the work all the way until nuclear capability. This is why this is very important. So it's important for them to stop the enrichment, to stop building the centrifuges, on the one hand. Secondly, the removal of all the fissile material. And thirdly, a very robust and continuous monitoring mechanism. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the show.
I definitely am not a politician. I spent my last 40 years as defending the decision of my political bosses. Some of them are here. And I think, justifully so, we are a democracy. And I don't want to elaborate on the political challenges that Israel faces there right now. I do want to say a few sentences about the security from a defense, a national defense standpoint, challenges that I think we are facing today. First of all, I think the nature of war, from a professional standpoint, the threat that we face is a bit different. And it's important to understand it. When I was a young lieutenant during the Yom Kippur War, it was quite simple. We had to mobilize. Early warning was very important. But once you mobilized, you went to the field, you saw the borders, the minefields, the fences, the strong points. You raised your binocular, you saw the division, you adapt your plane, attack, defense, et cetera, and execute it. More importantly, all the events take care in the battlefield. Today, war is different. We still have some of this, but it's different. You still need to mobilize. Then you go to the field. Where is exactly the field? Where is exactly the borders, the trend, the minefield? Where is the fences? It's not clear. You raise your binocular, you don't see any division. Where are the bad guys? Within urban area, underground, hiding behind civilians, then without uniform. So what about the military plane? Once you try to locate your enemies, I mean, there are all kinds of devices flying above your head, exploding on civilian in Israel. Even winning and losing was different. In '73, losing was more significant than today. And we have to understand this, I think, to anyone in the Golan Heights in Sinai was very clear what would happen and what would be the outcome if a Syrian tanks column will pass the Golan Heights. It's about Hula Valley and maybe Afula, about real losing, the sovereignty, being conquered by a foreign military. Today, it's not the case. It's a bit different. With all due respect to Hamas and Hezbollah, they cannot conquer the Galilee and the Negev, which is, I think it's a good sign. On the other hand, the entire country is part of the battlefield. We change the way we should organize. We need to plan and the capabilities that we need. And we have one military. How you make this military relevant to this new asymmetric, sometimes, as it's called, type of war. So I think that's what we are struggling right now with. But let me tell you, I think you can trust the military that he is doing the right adaptation to meet this different type of war. But from a strategic standpoint, leave the Iranian aside for a minute, just for a minute. Our military threat is declining, is not increasing. It's not, don't understand me wrong, it's not fun to have this rain of missiles, but it's no comparison to being conquered by a foreign military. But it's required different capability, much better intelligence, understanding that we cannot rely on the defense only. I think Iron Dome and all the ballistic missile defense capabilities that we have, and we do share, I want you to know that we do share a unique architecture of ballistic defense system on 4 layers. And it's amazing, an amazing technology. Not just the arrow, the Iron Dome, the David Sling in between. It's an amazing technology. Let's think about a capability, in the case of the Iron Dome, when you hit a device with about this size, 6 kilometers above the earth, on a speed of almost together 3 Mach. That's amazing. Unprecedented technology. But we cannot rely only on this defense. As small and tiny as Israel is, we cannot cover Israel with a Iron Dome and to expect that all the missiles will explode on the top of it. It's impossible. We cannot do it, not just economically, practically. We should be able to have the offensive capability to deal with this nature of threat. And that's require the capability and the understanding that we are not able to do it only on the defense side. This is one of the changes that I think we are dealing with. Maybe later on in the panel I'll elaborate more. The other issue is the change of the landscape. I think that's a tectonic move in the Middle East. And I'm referring to what's called, I think mistakenly, the Arab Spring. It's Arab, but not spring. I think it's an Islamic... I think it's, more correctly, it's an Islamic storm. And the one lesson I want you to remember, and I think it's important both to our political echelon and to the military as well. And I'm referring to the fact that we didn't see it coming. And if it's any comfort to you that neither the head of states and our colleague in Egypt, they didn't see it coming. It means that we have to be ready in the future to an event that we don't really predict. And that's in the case of the Arab Spring. It's not just about having a good intelligence. We cannot know what the other intelligence know. We had a visit of Omar Suleiman just 2 months before the demonstrator occupied Tahrir Square. Then the question was, if you recall, who is going to replace Mubarak? He was ill then. And he basically drew 2 scenarios. One, if Mubarak health will allow him, he will continue to the middle of 2011, where they have the election, and his son, Jamal, will be elected. And if his health will not allow him, probably myself, Suleiman, I'll take his place until the election, and then we will have the election, and his son, Jamal, will be elected. And someone in the room asked Suleiman, how do you know what will be the results during the election? So Suleiman said, in Egypt, it isn't important how you vote, it's important who count the vote. So, in Egypt, not in Israel. Well, he was dead wrong. 2 months later, it happened to be that he was wrong. And I'm talking about the second powerful man in Egypt, the guy who is responsible for the intelligence and all the mukhabarat, secret services, etc., etc. And the change influenced Israel. I don't want to speak about the entire countries, but just a few sentences. Egypt is a source of concern. I'm not suggesting that tomorrow morning we will see a major shift in Egypt relationship with us, but definitely the rhetoric and maybe the other situation will gradually change. And it's not for the good. We must admit that although Mubarak was not a Zionist, but he was an anchor of stability in the region. And we don't really know what kind and nature of government and a political body we will see in Egypt. Egypt is occupied with a lot of problems. They have to get their house in order. They don't control Sinai. They have problems on the border. But it's a different Egypt for us. So I think we have to be ready to make the necessary change if it's needed in the case of Egypt. And Egypt is important because usually in the region, Egypt led the example for the entire Arab world. I think it's important because for the first time in the Arab world, you see what you see. What you see, it's not derived from what we call the usual suspect. Israelis, the Zionism, the Israeli-Arab conflict, the big Satan, the small Satan. It's really represent a genuine and fundamental desire in each country, and it's different from each country. So I think they are going to be changed forever. Nobody really knows what direction, but definitely for the immediate future, instability and uncertainty is going to increase, and we have to be ready for that. Syria, in my eyes, represent an opportunity. And I tell you why. It's not because I like Assad or not. It's not because the devil we know or not. It's because if Assad goes, I think any regime that replaces Assad will not be an ally and as supporters as Assad regime to Iran and Hezbollah. I think we have a potential, if Assad toppled down, to alliance change in the region. Iran will lose its most important, only state ally in the region. Hezbollah will be more restrained. I think there is a mistake in understanding how important Syria is to Hezbollah. Most of the weaponry that Hezbollah possesses is coming from an Syrian depots. The money is coming from Iran, but the weaponry is coming from Syria. And after the Iranian and Hezbollah intervene in what's going on now in Syria and with all the blood that has been shed, I don't think that any government in Syria will support Hezbollah in Iran as Assad did. And for us, I think it's a good news. Whether it's going to happen or not, I don't know. I think the international community, in its response to what's going on in Syria, basically, I think Assad understands it as a license to kill. I'm sorry to say it, but that's the way he gets the message. Nobody really cares about what's going on. Besides rhetoric, nothing on tangible and pragmatic action on the ground happening. In Syria, we must understand the situation is different. 40% of the population are minorities: Druze, Kurds, Alawites, and Christian. The last thing they want is a religious government, like Muslim Brothers. They enjoy the freedom of religion today with the Alawites. So beside the economic sector is sitting on a fast, and there are Sunnites in Aleppo. And it started differently in Syria than other places. It started in Dara, which is a dusty, sleepy, small town in the periphery of Syria. It was not started in Damascus. And it's a fighting about life. Unlike in Egypt, where the population is more homogeneous, in Syria, there was not going to be any peace between the Alawites and the Sunnis. So the Alawites really fighting for their life. And we will have to see what happens. But I don't think, people ask me, okay, what would happen if we have a Muslim brother government? They will start or try to do something against us. After all, we had the quietest border in the Golan Heights for the last almost 40 years. Well, I think we have the quiet border in the Golan Heights because everyone in the Syrian military knows the real balance of power, the military balance of power between us and the Syrian military. I think the reason why the border is quiet is because they understand the potential outcome from a military engagement with the IDF. And that's why it's quiet, not because of anything else. Definitely, and I'll end here, definitely the most, I think, challenging potential threat that we are facing right now is the nuclear one. And let me say that I think it's not just about nuclear, it's about this regime. I think we simply cannot allow this regime to have a military nuclear capability. We have to do everything we can to prevent it. I think the preferred strategy should be to do everything beneath the radar, and I read here and there all kinds of stories, in order to slow down the pace of the program. Then to increase the sanction. I think the sanction is important part of it. Nobody really knows whether the Iranian will be will change the course of action. It did happen in the past. We must say that. And that's intelligent. In 2003, I want you to know, when President Bush just announced that the Americans are going to Iraq, they did stop the program. They didn't want to be the next target. Unfortunately, 2 years later, when they saw that it's not that bad, they restart the program. So it's not unprecedented. They might think about it. But in order to do this, I think we need a crippling sanction, much more severe sanction. My concern is about the sanction is whether too late and too light. We can move on the sanction. Definitely should be supported by a military, credible military option, which is on the table. I think we must have it. I think we still have time. It's not tomorrow morning. It's better to persuade our friends in the region and the world that it's a global threat. It's not just a regional or Israeli problem. And I think this government did a good job in this. It's much better to have unified and joint efforts dealing with Iran. But in any case, Israel must has its own capability to deal with this threat. We simply cannot allow to live underneath a Iranian nuclear umbrella. I think everyone who's considering this scenario understands that it's something that we cannot and we should not allow. Thank you.
I just, since everybody is beginning their talks by saying, well, actually, let me just, about the person beforehand, I think it's germane to what I was going to say, which was that regarding General Ashkenazi's statement that nobody foresaw what was going to happen in Egypt. And I'm saying this not to blow my own horn, but because it's germane to what I wanted to talk about, which was that actually I did. And I did not only when the demonstrations began in Tahrir Square, but already back 12 years ago when I started writing, first in Makori Shon and then 10 years ago when I moved to the Jerusalem Post. And the reason that I and others were able to understand what was going to happen when Mubarak left power was because rather than rely on intelligence information, we were listening to what people were saying in Egypt, just like we listened to what people are saying in the Palestinian Authority, just like we listen to what people are saying all over the world, and that's, of course, all open source. And it was pretty clear that the most popular movement in Egypt is the Muslim Brotherhood, and that in the event that Mubarak were to leave power, that the Muslim Brotherhood, supported by the Egyptian people, would be empowered. This is certainly clear from the 2005 parliamentary elections in Egypt. At any rate, the reason why it's germane to what I was going to say anyway is because I wanted to talk about the distinction between what Israelis think about President Obama and what the American Jewish community thinks about President Obama. And I'm using my position as a columnist as opposed to a diplomat or a politician to talk about something that they will never mention. Steve talked about the Jerusalem Post poll that we did ahead of this conference, and one of the things that we already published in the paper was that we did, I think, a fourth or a fifth poll since Obama came into office asking Israelis whether we believe that he's pro-American, pro-Israel or pro-Palestinian or neutral. And whereas, according to some exit polls, 78% of the American Jewish community voted for Obama, according to our latest poll, 3/4 of Israelis do not believe that Obama is pro-Israel. Only 24% of Israelis do. And that is a mirror image of the American Jewish position on Obama as that was manifested in 2008. And I think that it's important, again, to talk about why this is the case. Why is it that the Israeli public has the exact opposite view of Obama as the American Jewish community? And I think the first thing that we can talk about is the fact that over the weekend on Friday, he announced that he was unfreezing $192 million in American aid to the Palestinian Authority. And this was aid that was frozen by the US Congress because the Palestinian Authority under Mahmoud Abbas, in complete contravention of their treaty obligations to Israel under the Oslo Accords, sought to gain international recognition of Palestinian statehood outside the framework of a negotiated peace with Israel at the UN in September, in contravention of American law as well. And he didn't seem to have a problem with that the way that the US Congress did, and therefore he unfroze the aid and said that it's absolutely essential to American interests that the Palestinian Authority that doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist, that refuses now for over 3 years to negotiate with the Israeli government, to continue to receive US taxpayer money. And then all of this began, I think that's just the latest thing that he's done. I think that Israeli disillusionment with Obama began in a serious way in June of 2009 when he gave a speech in Cairo to the Muslim world where he resonated, he echoed the views of jihadists, of Ahmadinejad, where he said that Israel's right to exist is anchored in the Holocaust. And then likened what the Jews went through in Europe to the plight of the Palestinians since the establishment of Israel. But I think it was the former thing that was so jarring to Israelis, because what we had then was a statement by the US president that the right of the Jewish people to national self-determination in our historic homeland was not the basis upon which we established the state of Israel. This is a complete negation or non-recognition of the nature of the Jewish people and the nature of the Jewish state, the nature of the Zionist revolution by the American president. And it was a very, very shocking and hostile thing for him to have said, and to have said it in Cairo was doubly shocking and amazing. We add to that the fact that I think largely owing to the president's demand that Israel freeze all Jewish building beyond the 1949 armistice line so early as well in his presidency. It's a demand that no one had made, including the Palestinians themselves. Essentially, as Mahmoud Abbas told the Washington Post, made it impossible for him to meet with Israel because, of course, he can't be more pro-Palestinian than the US president. And if the US president is saying that Jews should be discriminated against, that our property rights shouldn't be recognized or respected simply because we're Jewish, then how can he possibly sit down with Benjamin Netanyahu? And that, as a precondition for negotiations, obviously there's nothing for him to talk about with the elected prime minister of the state of Israel. And go on and talk about his recent last year speech in May, where he said that the basis for a negotiated agreement between Israel and the Palestinians are the indefensible 1949 armistice lines, which if Israel were to contract to within them, it couldn't defend itself. And on to him telling Israel, Jewish American leaders, to speak to Israel and say that we should search our souls to understand why peace is not existing between us and the Palestinians, and said nothing, for instance, to Mahmoud Abbas when he presided over the celebration of the 50th birthday of Dalal Mughrabi, a Fatah mass murderer who conducted the 1977 attack on the bus on the coastal road in Israel, in which 37 Israelis were murdered. We go on to Turkey. Deputy Foreign Minister Danny Ayalon mentioned that after Operation Cast Lead, the Turks lowered their diplomatic representation in Israel. And they haven't returned their ambassador, to the best of my knowledge, or they returned him and now he's gone again. The American government has consistently stated that Israel should apologize to Turkey for its act of aggression against the state of Israel by sponsoring the IHH Mavi Marmara terror ship that went in contravention of international law to provide aid and comfort to an internationally recognized terrorist organization, Hamas. This is a shocking thing. Israel should apologize to Turkey? Aside from that, just this week it was reported in the Turkish media that Turkey has blocked Israeli participation in upcoming NATO exercises. Where's the United States? Where's the United States reining in Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan to say, how dare you? Don't you dare. You are a NATO member. You cannot be blocking Israeli participation in NATO exercises. You want to be a member of NATO? Then support the Western alliance, including a strong Israel as an integral member of and the front line of that Western alliance. Let's just go to Iran for a second. You know, you can think anything that you want about what should be done, what shouldn't be done, but clearly it is odd that the American president was fighting the US Congress that was attempting to force him to place more stringent sanctions in Iran, and that today, when he is conducting negotiations with the Iranians, he has already said, according to the media, that he is willing for them to have continued uranium enrichment activities. This is not a credible statement of somebody who claims to have Israel's back. And here I just want to mention, you know, it was interesting, during the Democratic primaries in 2007, 2008, I found myself in the United States, I think it was the summer of '07. And there was a big fight for the Jewish vote in Pennsylvania between Clinton and Obama. And Clinton wanted to make sure that the Jews of Pennsylvania knew that she was more pro-Israel than Obama was. And so she said that if Israel is nuked by Iran, that the United States under her presidency will nuke Iran. And this made headlines and everything. And I was interviewed, I think my one and only time, by NPR. And they asked me what I thought. And I said, well, from where I'm sitting, that's not a very comforting statement. What do I care? But the point is, what she was saying was, when we're first on the list, we'll take care of it. Israel is clearly first on the target list of the Iranians, and therefore, our ability to defend ourselves should not be undercut. Intelligence information that we transfer to our allies, the United States of America, should not consistently be finding its way to the front page of the newspapers. And so on and so forth. And finally, just to go back to where I started, which was Egypt, you know, again, it was clear to everybody that was listening to the Egyptian people and paying attention to what they were saying about who they are and what they want to be, that when Mubarak goes, if it's done certainly in a non-orderly fashion, then we're going to see a reawakening of the Southern Front. And what did we see Washington do when all of the Israeli military establishment, security establishment, as well as the commentariat, I can say as a member of, were saying, don't push Mubarak out. Mubarak has to go. And what do we see now? Yes, we need immediate presidential elections. Well, who's going to win them? Just guess. This is not the way that you act when you want to ensure the stability and peace of the Middle East. This is not the way that you act when you have Israel's back. And it's, by the way, not the way that you act when you have the best interests of American national security in mind, because let me tell you, unlike what certain members of the Obama administration have said, the Muslim Brotherhood is not a secular organization. This is a progenitor not only of Hamas, but of Al-Qaeda. Now, my last statement is, you know, when we go back to public opinion and we go back to what is in the hearts and minds of the people of Israel, the people of the United States, or the people of Egypt, or the people of Syria, wherever it happens to be. You know, one of the things that the Obama administration did at the time, under the Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel, told, I think it was Jeff Goldberg from The Atlantic, but I'm not sure, that essentially, by giving the cold shoulder to the elected government of Israel, that they expected to see happen in 2009, I think it was, 2010, the same thing that happened when the Clinton administration gave similar treatment to Prime Minister Netanyahu the first time that he was in office. And much to their amazement, the meaner that they've been to the elected prime minister of the only democracy in the Middle East, where the results of the election are the result of the actual voting booth activities of the citizens and not the electorate, the ballot counters, is that Netanyahu and his grip on power has become strengthened, not weakened. And the reason for that, is the reason why 3/4 of Israelis, 76%, don't perceive Obama as being pro-Israel, because we tried everything that they're telling us to do. And we got Camp David in 2000, and we got the Palestinian terror war in the years that followed that saw 1,500 Israelis butchered in our streets. We tried to leave and just hand over the keys when we were gone. And we got missiles raining down on all the cities in the south, and now we have Hamas, which purportedly has the capacity to even send missiles over to Tel Aviv, which, by the way, is what Ariel Sharon said when he said that the fate of Netzarim is the fate of Tel Aviv. And what did we get in return? We got the Goldstone report. We got delegitimized. We got isolation. So that when people keep telling us to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, we say, no, actually, you know, sir, that's what Albert Einstein referred to as insanity. And guess what? We're not crazy. So I think that it's very important when we try to understand what's happening in Israel, what moves the Israeli people, we realize that we are completely committed to maintaining our security. Of course we want peace. There's no Israeli that doesn't want peace, but we're not willing to endanger ourselves in order to get somebody to pat us on our back and say, good work. We have more at stake than smiles from foreigners telling us whatever we think we should be hearing at any particular minute of the day. The Israeli people understand that, and I hope that we have the kind of discussion here today in the conference, and that we continue a discussion as we move forward with our American Jewish brethren and with the global community as a whole to understand why it is that we feel the way that we do, and what matters to us, because Israel is the front line of the free world, and as we go, so goes everybody else. Thank you very much.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.